In today's video, I'm making a drill index to store my drills and to keep them organised. It'll live between the top and bottom cupboard of this repurposed bandsaw cabinet that I made in my last video. At the moment, I keep the drills in a drawer stored in the original clumsy box. I'll make the drill index out of this chunk of aluminium, and I'm attempting to make it like a vintage style one. Those would have been cast, but I'll be making it differently with a technique I haven't tried before. The first thing I'll do is cut the aluminium block down, leaving it a few millimeters oversized of the finished piece. And the technique I'll use to get the design onto the block is to etch it. I've only done a couple of tests making these signs. I've learned from those experiments, so hopefully this is going to work out. It's taking a bit of getting through, but it's not too bad. With this bandsaw, you can have a sit down while you're cutting. Now that's cut, I need to sand one face to a decent finish with fine grit sandpaper, then wipe it down with acetone ready for etching. I'll be using a vinyl cutter to help etch the design onto the block. A friend made a test piece for me to try out on one of the signs that I showed, and I thought it was that cool I went out and bought a machine of my own. I printed out the design just to make it clear which pieces I need to remove, but the printout could also be stuck to the block and then with the center punch mark the position of the holes, and then you could engrave your own name or logo onto the block, or you could even make it out of wood and do some hand carvings. So I'll put a link to the template in the description for anyone that may be interested. Next, I need to weed out the pieces that I want to etch, and the remaining pieces will become a mask, also known as a resist, as it prevents the acid from etching the aluminium where you don't want it to. That went very well. It's actually quite enjoyable and easy enough to do. And the last 5 holes down the one side are for my center drills. Next, I'll use transfer tape to transfer the vinyl onto the block. The numbers really are tiny, and it's amazing the detail that can be cut on the vinyl cutter, but the middles of some of the numbers are just too difficult to keep, so I'll put those in with a fine marker, which will also work as a resist. You could even draw your whole design onto a block with a marker, and that would work too. The block needs to hang upside down in the acid, and to help with that, I'll glue these supports onto the back of the block, and it needs to be upside down so the particles fall away as it etches, leaving a fresh surface for the acid to keep working on. And the acid I'm using is ferric chloride. I'm wearing gloves and safety glasses and working in a well-ventilated area. If you do have a go at this, then be careful, although it really is pretty safe as long as you're careful. And remember to clean the surface to be etched with acetone, which I did earlier. That started to bubble instantly, and while that's working away, I'll prepare 2 baths, one with just water and a shallow one with water and baking soda to neutralise the acid when it's finished. I'm agitating it now and then to help work any particles away from the etching surface. It was working away nicely, then in no time at all, at the 25-minute mark, the acid went pretty crazy. It really heated up and I could only just about hold on to the aluminium as that was really hot too. It melted the hot glue, which in hindsight was a bad idea. I didn't get any footage of taking it out as I was more concerned with saving it. I was sure the vinyl underneath all that crud would be melted, but surprisingly, it was all intact. Now I'm neutralising the acid in the soda bath, and even though I was hoping for a deeper etch, it really is looking quite promising. When I etched the brass signs, there was no real sign of heat, and I did know that the more you etch in a batch, the hotter it can get, and I've learnt a little bit more about etching and what to expect. I poured the acid back into the bottle, ready to use again another time, and then I wiped the container with kitchen towels and left it to dry out. When it's dry, it'll be safer to discard. Now I'm cutting off the corners, and if I were to etch one of these again, I'd drill holes in those corners knowing that they are going to get cut off and insert standoffs to keep the face of the block under the surface of the acid. Next I'll grind the edges, and my grinder is temporarily fixed to a pallet away from my lathe, and you may have noticed the doorway at the back of the workshop. That's to my new grinding room, and it should keep the main workshop fairly dust free and keep the lathe and mill happy. I've made a couple of videos this week on building the grinding room. I posted those on Patreon if you fancy watching those and supporting me over there. I reckon it's looking pretty good. Now I'll remove the vinyl and see how the etch looks. To get the drill bits sitting at the right height in the block and to get a nice curve throughout the drill bits, I need to drill the holes deeper for the bigger drill bits and less so for the smaller ones. And I've worked out the heights that I need to do those at, so let's get on with that. I'm centre drilling them all first, but it really isn't necessary as the position of the holes don't need to be super accurate. I'm also using my milling machine, but a drill press would be perfect too. You could even drill them with a cordless, but if you don't drill them straight, then the drill bits will look wonky when you come to store them. So I'd say you really do need at least a drill press. I'm drilling the holes for the centre drills now with the actual drill bit that will live in there, and I'm drilling down as far as the clearance on the drill will let me. That's looking good, so now I'll start on the regular drill bits. To set the height of each bit, I'll lower it down onto a ruler, then zero the DRO, and I've already taken into account the thickness of the ruler with my measurements, and the ruler is 1mm thick. Now I just need to do the rest of them exactly the same way. And from 4.5mm onwards, they're all 21mm deep, so I stuck a reminder next to the DRO. All the holes along the back are in line along the y-axis, and when I center drilled them, I zeroed the DRO, so now I can get back to that and be in the same position. And now I just need to find the position of each hole along the x-axis. This is how I'm centering the drill in the x-axis. I'm lowering it, watching for any deflection when the bevel of the drill meets the edge of the hole, and then I make any adjustments until it's centered. All the drill bits from 10mm and up all have 10mm shanks, so now I can finish the rest of them without changing the drill bit. I don't want a deep chamfer, so I'm just taking off the corner by hand, and here it is filled out, and I reckon it's looking great. Now I need a way to keep it on the cabinet but still be able to remove it. I'll make a couple of knobs to attach to the cabinet, which will locate into recesses on the underside of the index, and I'll drill those recesses first. I'm using an 18mm drill bit to remove most of the material. Then I'll plunge a 20mm end mill down to finish the hole with a flat bottom. An end mill isn't exactly designed for this, but it'll work and it'll do the job. Next, I'll turn down the knobs from this 25mm aluminium round bar. I marked the position of the knobs from the top, even though I'd already worked out earlier that I couldn't fit a drill in there, so I had to mark them again from underneath. It's just about finished. It just needs the edges cleaning up with a 240 grit belt on the belt grinder, a little hand sanding, and then I'll put a couple of coats of clear satin spray on. I was originally going to paint the etching. I even bought the paint for it, but I reckon it looks great as it is, so I'm going to leave it. Let me know in the comments what you would have done, whether you would have painted it or left it. I reckon it turned out fantastic, even better than I thought it would. I love the vintage look. Hopefully you liked it too. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.